Wembley Stadium, London, July 16, 1988. The air was electric, charged with the collective anticipation of 100,000 souls who had gathered for the pinnacle event of Michael Jackson's Bad World Tour. The massive venue, a cathedral of modern entertainment, seemed to pulse with a life of its own. The rhythmic heartbeat of 100,000 pairs of hands clapping in unison, 100,000 voices chanting a single name, Michael, Michael, Michael. The sound was oceanic, rising and falling like waves crashing against the towering walls of the stadium, reverberating through the warm summer night air of London. It was more than noise. It was communion, a shared expression of devotion that transcended language, age, and culture. In the darkness beyond the stage, technicians made final adjustments to what was, at that time, the most sophisticated concert production ever mounted, a symphony of light, sound, and engineering that would serve as the backdrop for the night's true spectacle. The human miracle that was Michael Jackson in his absolute prime. The anticipation had been building for hours, with some fans having camped outside the stadium for days to secure their positions closest to the stage. They had traveled from every corner of the globe. Japanese teenagers who had saved for years to make the pilgrimage. American families who had crossed an ocean. Europeans who had journeyed from remote villages and sophisticated capitals alike. They were unified now, strangers becoming a single organism of shared expectation. The air in the stadium grew still. The chanting faded to murmurs, then to whispers, then to a silence so complete it seemed to have physical weight. In that perfect hush, 100,000 people collectively held their breath, waiting for magic to begin. It started with darkness, a total, consuming absence of light that erased the boundaries between individuals, making the vast crowd momentarily invisible even to itself. Then came a single, piercing beam of white light, cutting through the blackness like a laser, focusing on the center of the massive stage. The crowd's reaction was instantaneous and deafening, a wall of sound that physically pushed against the eardrums, but the light remained empty, illuminating nothing but expectation. 1 beat, 2 beats, 3 beats of perfect theatrical timing, and then an explosion of pyrotechnics so sudden and bright that it temporarily blinded those nearest the stage, accompanied by the opening synthesizer blast of "Wanna Be Startin' Something." As vision returned, there he was, as if materialized from the collective imagination of the crowd. Michael Jackson, suspended 15 feet above the stage on a hydraulic platform, held in a perfectly poised stance. One arm thrust skyward, head tilted back, the silhouette instantly recognizable to anyone alive in the latter part of the 20th century. He was dressed entirely in black, the material studded with carefully placed crystals that caught and refracted the stage lights, creating an effect of controlled brilliance. On his head sat what would become perhaps the most iconic piece of headwear in performance history, a black fedora tilted at a precise angle that simultaneously obscured and highlighted his features. As the platform slowly descended, Michael remained perfectly still, a living statue allowing the crowd's adoration to wash over him like a physical force. Only when his feet touched the stage did he explode into motion, each movement so precise, yet so fluid that it seemed to belong to a different order of physical possibility than ordinary human movement. The crowd's response was visceral and immediate, screams that tore from throats already raw from hours of anticipation, tears that flowed freely and without embarrassment, the physical manifestation of emotion too large to be contained within the boundaries of ordinary experience. What followed was Michael Jackson at the absolute zenith of his powers, delivering a performance of such technical perfection and raw emotional power that it would later be studied by performance theorists and cultural anthropologists as a template for the outer limits of what live entertainment could achieve. Each song was a self-contained theatrical experience, a perfect marriage of music, dance, and visual spectacle that built upon and transcended what had come before. Through Thriller, Billie Jean, Beat It, and deeper cuts from the Bad album, Michael maintained a level of energy and precision that seemed to defy the normal limitations of human stamina. His voice, often overlooked in discussions that focused on his dancing or his cultural impact, was flawless that night, hitting every note with a clarity and emotional resonance that silenced critics and justified the devotion of his fans. His dancing was beyond categorization or comparison. Movements that seemed to bend not just the body, but the very fabric of space and time to his will. And through it all, the black fedora remained in place, an integral part of the carefully constructed visual iconography that Michael wielded as skillfully as he controlled his voice and body. The hat was more than an accessory. It was a symbol, a visual shorthand for the enigmatic figure wearing it, simultaneously revealing and concealing, inviting attention while maintaining mystery. Longtime fans recognized how the fedora had evolved over the years from a performance accessory to something approaching a totem, a physical manifestation of the barrier Michael maintained between his public persona and his private self. When he tipped it forward to shadow his eyes during the more introspective moments of ballads, when he used it as a prop during dance sequences, when he occasionally removed it with theatrical flourish to signal a transition between songs, the audience responded with a heightened attention of witnesses to ritual. The hat had become part of the language of Michael's performance, a vocabulary of gesture and symbol that his audience had learned to read over years of devoted attention. It happened during Smooth Criminal, a song that had already become legendary for its accompanying video with a gravity-defying lean that had required Michael to invent and patent special shoes to achieve. The live performance of the song was a tour de force, a complex choreography executed with a combination of military precision and fluid grace that left even the most jaded observers breathless. The song had reached its instrumental bridge, a showcase for Michael's dancing that began with a series of spins so rapid they blurred the distinction between human figure and pure motion. It was during the third spin, as Michael transitioned from a movement so fast it appeared to liquefy his form into a sudden, sharp stop that happened. Later analysis of the footage, and this moment would be analyzed frame by fans for decades to come, would reveal the precise sequence. A microscopically small error in hand position, a fraction of a degree's difference in the angle of his head, a tiny irregularity in the stage surface, perhaps even a subtle shift in the air currents created by the massive crowd. Whatever the cause, as Michael completed the third spin and snapped into his iconic pose, the black fedora, which had remained perfectly positioned through movements that would have sent any ordinary hat flying, lifted slightly from his head. For a fraction of a second, it hovered, caught in the liminal space between security and flight, between costume and independent object. Then, as if making a decision of its own, it left Michael's head completely, sailing in a graceful arc several feet to the left before landing on the stage with a soft sound that was inaudible against the music, but somehow visually resonant in its finality. The moment froze in time, stretching into a bubble of suspended reality within the carefully choreographed flow of the performance. Michael Jackson, known for a level of perfectionism that approached the pathological, whose rehearsals were legendary for their intensity and precision, whose performances followed predetermined patterns with the exactitude of atomic clocks, stood hatless before 100,000 witnesses, the meticulous perfection of his appearance suddenly, unexpectedly altered. For a heartbeat, no more than that, a flicker of genuine surprise crossed his face, an unscripted, unguarded moment from a performer for whom every public appearance was normally controlled to the last detail. The crowd saw it, this glimpse of the human behind the icon, and a ripple of reaction passed through the stadium like a physical wave, a collective intake of breath that created a momentary dip in the wall of sound. Michael himself paused, suspended in the moment of genuine spontaneity that had been thrust upon him. Those closest to the stage, with an unimpeded view, would later swear they saw something shift in his expression, a momentary uncertainty, followed by what appeared to be the beginning of a genuine, unfiltered smile, the kind rarely seen on the public face of Michael Jackson in those years. What happened next would be recounted and relived by those present for decades to come, described in interviews and memoirs, in social media posts and documentary footage, with a reverence typically reserved for religious experiences or the birth of children. Instead of continuing the choreography or making the small gesture that would have summoned a stagehand to retrieve the fallen hat, Michael did something entirely unexpected. He turned toward the hat, his movement deliberate yet somehow newly fluid, as if liberated from the constraints of the planned performance. As the instrumental bridge continued, he approached the fedora with a series of steps that were not part of the established smooth criminal choreography, but instead had the quality of improvisation. Elegant, playful, almost teasing. Reaching the hat, he didn't immediately pick it up, but instead danced around it, incorporating it into a spontaneously created sequence that played with proximity and distance, expectation and delay. The crowd began to respond, first with a murmur of appreciation that quickly grew to encouraging cheers. Sensing this shift in energy, Michael expanded the improvisation, his movements becoming more expansive, more joyful, more transparently playful than anything in the carefully constructed official choreography. He feinted toward the hat, then away, then circled it with a series of his signature moves, all while maintaining perfect synchronization with the music. The stadium was fully engaged now, the energy transforming from appreciation to something approaching delirium as they witnessed something few had ever seen. Michael Jackson, the ultimate perfectionist, not just acknowledging an unplanned moment, but embracing it, transforming it, elevating it from accident to art. When he finally moved to retrieve the hat, he did so with a balletic movement that seamlessly incorporated the action into his dance, scooping the fedora from the stage with a graceful motion that flowed directly into a spin. But he didn't immediately replace it on his head. Instead, to the escalating delight of the crowd, he began to dance with the hat as a partner, twirling it between his fingers, passing it from hand to hand in a display of dexterity that showcased the granular control he maintained over every part of his body. He balanced it momentarily on his elbow, rolled it up his arm to his shoulder, then with a flick sent it spinning into the air, where it rotated 3 perfect times before he caught it with a precision that seemed to defy physics. The crowd was delirious now, the sound of physical force that seemed to press against the skin. People who had been seated were on their feet. Those already standing were jumping, screaming, reaching toward the stage as if to physically connect with the miracle they were witnessing. And through it all, Michael's face had transformed. The careful mask of performance concentration had given way to something rarely seen in his adult performances: pure, unfiltered joy. He was smiling, not the choreographed smile that appeared at predetermined moments in his shows, but a genuine expression of pleasure, of fun, of the simple human delight in play and skill and connection. As the bridge of Smooth Criminal neared its conclusion, signaling the approaching return of the vocal section, Michael executed a final flourish with the hat. With a movement of balletic grace, he tossed it high into the air, completed a perfect spin beneath it, and then, with timing so precise it appeared to bend the normal rules of cause and effect, allowed it to descend directly onto his head, coming to rest at exactly the angle it had occupied before its unscheduled flight. The perfection of this recovery, the seamless return to the established order of the performance, but now transformed by the spontaneous interlude of genuine humanity, broke something open in the stadium. The roar that followed was unlike anything that had come before. Not just loud, but qualitatively different, containing within its massive sound a release of emotion too complex and powerful to be expressed in any other way. If this story moves you, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more rare and powerful moments from Michael's extraordinary life and career. Your support helps us continue to bring these historical moments to light, preserving the legacy of an artist who touched so many lives across generations and continents. As Michael resumed the vocal portion of Smooth Criminal, now reunited with his fedora, but somehow transformed by the unscripted interlude, the energy in Wembley Stadium had fundamentally changed. What had already been an exceptional performance had crossed some invisible threshold into the realm of the legendary. The connection between performer and audience, always strong at Michael's concerts, had deepened into something approaching communion. Many in the audience were weeping openly, not from the usual emotions of fandom, but from something deeper. The sense of having witnessed a genuine moment of humanity from an artist whose public persona had become increasingly controlled and distant, whose massive fame had built walls that ordinarily kept the world at a carefully maintained distance. In that unguarded moment of play, in the spontaneous dance with a wayward hat, they had glimpsed the man behind the icon, had been reminded that beneath the extraordinary talent and the carefully constructed image was a human being capable of joy, of improvisation, of the simple pleasure of physical skill and audience connection. The remainder of the concert unfolded with this transformed energy. Michael performed each remaining song with a subtle but perceptible difference, a new freedom, a heightened connection with both the music and the audience. The perfectionism remained. He was, after all, still Michael Jackson, but it was now infused with a quality of joy that hadn't been present before the hat's unexpected flight. Those with backstage access would later report that the mood among the notoriously demanding performer and his team had shifted as well. Michael's face in the quick costume changes, normally intense and focused, retained traces of that genuine smile. He made eye contact with crew members, exchanged words that made them laugh, carried with him the energy of that unscripted moment as if it had unlocked something long dormant. When the concert finally concluded, after multiple encores demanded by a crowd unwilling to let the experience end, the ovation lasted for nearly 20 minutes, a sustained expression of appreciation that was as much for the genuine humanity they had glimpsed as for the spectacular showmanship that had framed it. As Michael took his final bows, he did something unprecedented, at least in the context of the meticulously planned Bad Tour performances. He removed the fedora one last time, but instead of incorporating it into a choreographed gesture, he simply held it over his heart for a moment, his face open and vulnerable in a way rarely seen in public. Then, with a motion that sent an audible gasp through the still-standing crowd, he tossed the hat, the actual hat that had played such a pivotal role in the night's most memorable moment, into the audience. What followed was bedlam, as dozens of hands reached for the airborne souvenir. It would later emerge that the hat was caught by a 12-year-old girl from Manchester named Emma Clark, attending her first concert with her father, a single parent who had saved for months to purchase the tickets. The hat would become not just a cherished personal memento, but a kind of sacred object in the community of Michael Jackson fans, with Emma occasionally bringing it to fan conventions and charity events, allowing others to share in the tangible connection to that magical night. But beyond the physical artifact, what remained most powerfully in the collective memory of those present was the moment itself, the unplanned, genuine, human instant when the most choreographed performer in entertainment history had been forced into spontaneity and had discovered, perhaps to his own surprise as much as the audience's, a new dimension of connection, a deeper level of performance that transcended the boundaries between rehearsed perfection and authentic experience. In the days that followed, the Wembley hat moment, as it quickly became known, featured prominently in reviews of the concert. Music critics, often measured in their assessment of even the most popular performers, wrote with unusual emotion about witnessing a genuine breakthrough in the relationship between Michael and his audience. For all the pyrotechnics, for all the technical brilliance, it was a simple wardrobe malfunction that provided the evening's most transcendent moment, wrote The Guardian's reviewer. In that unscripted interaction with a fallen hat, Jackson revealed more of his true self than in a dozen carefully crafted interviews. Videos of the moment, captured on the primitive personal recording devices of the era and later on the official concert film, became some of the most watched and rewatched segments of Michael's performance history. Fans would debate every detail, the exact trajectory of the hat, the precise sequence of Michael's improvised movements, the subtle changes in his expression as he transformed accident into opportunity. Professional dancers would analyze the extraordinary physical control demonstrated in what appeared to be spontaneous movement, but actually revealed the depth of Michael's bodily mastery, the ability to create, in real time, choreography of exceptional quality, to transform impulse into art through the medium of perfect technique. But beyond the analysis and the admiration, what resonated most deeply was the simple humanity of the moment. The reminder that even at the height of his fame, even at the center of the massive machinery of modern entertainment, Michael Jackson remained a human being capable of surprise, adaptation, and joy. For Michael himself, the Wembley hat incident became a private watershed. Those close to him would later reveal that he spoke of it often in the months that followed, describing it as a moment of unexpected freedom within the increasingly restrictive structure of his public life. His longtime choreographer recounted a conversation in which Michael had said, "For a minute there, I remembered what it felt like before everything got so big, before every move had to mean something." As the Bad Tour continued its global journey, keen-eyed observers noted subtle changes in Michael's performances, moments of apparent spontaneity incorporated into the otherwise precisely planned shows, small windows of improvisation built into the choreography, as if he were deliberately creating opportunities to recapture something of that Wembley night's magic. The fedora itself took on new significance in his performances. While it had always been an important element of his stage persona, after London it became almost a co-performer, with Michael occasionally incorporating brief interactions with it into his choreography, small moments of play that referenced what had happened at Wembley without ever quite replicating it. Those familiar with his obsessive approach to performance quality recognized these moments for what they were: deliberate echoes of an unplanned perfect moment, attempts to recapture through design what had originally emerged from accident. The hat that had flown away had shown him a door to a different kind of performance, a different kind of connection, and though such moments couldn't be manufactured, he could at least acknowledge their possibility, could leave space in the perfectly structured edifice of his shows for lightning to strike again. The Wembley hat moment would continue to resonate throughout Michael's career and beyond, becoming part of the canon of legendary live performance moments alongside Elvis Presley's '68 comeback special, Queen at Live Aid, and a handful of other instances where something transcendent emerged within the context of popular entertainment. When Michael's life began its tragic descent into controversy and isolation in the 1990s, fans would often refer back to that moment as evidence of the genuine humanity that existed beneath the increasingly troubled public narrative. "Remember the hat," they would say to each other online, a shorthand for remembering the man behind the media construction, the artist capable of transforming mishap into magic. After Michael's death in 2009, as the world grappled with the complex legacy of a figure who had been both deeply loved and profoundly misunderstood, the Wembley hat moment took on new poignancy. In the flood of retrospectives and memorials, the footage appeared again and again. This perfect moment of unguarded joy from an artist whose life had contained too little of it. This window into the spontaneous humanity of a performer often described in terms that made him seem more myth than man. For a generation who knew Michael primarily through the troubles of his later years, it provided a glimpse of what had made him so beloved in the first place. Not just the extraordinary talent, but the human connection that talent enabled when allowed to express itself freely. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel to support our ongoing effort to preserve and share these remarkable moments from Michael's career. Your engagement helps us continue to celebrate the artistry and humanity of one of the greatest performers the world has ever known. Today, Emma Clark still has the hat, preserved in a custom-made display case in her home in London. Now in her 40s, a mother herself, she maintains its condition with curatorial care, while still honoring its significance by occasionally allowing it to be displayed at museum exhibitions about Michael's cultural impact. "People always ask if I've been tempted to sell it," she said in a recent interview. They quote these astronomical figures that collectors have offered. But how do you put a price on a moment of magic? That hat isn't just a piece of memorabilia. It's a physical connection to a perfect moment when one of the world's greatest artists showed us his heart. The hat itself shows signs of its journey. The slight scuff on the brim from its landing on the Wembley stage, the almost imperceptible fingerprint from Michael's handling during his improvised dance, The careful where that speaks to its active role in one of the most iconic performances of the 20th century. Museum curators who have examined it note that its construction is both ordinary and extraordinary, made of standard materials but with subtle customizations that helped it remain in place during Michael's athletic performances, that gave it the perfect weight for the signature moves where it became an extension of his body rather than merely a costume element. Like its most famous wearer, it is simultaneously mundane and magical, an everyday object transformed into something transcendent through its association with exceptional human artistry. And in homes around the world, countless fans who were present at Wembley that night still tell the story. To children and grandchildren, to friends and family, to anyone who will listen. They describe the perfect stillness as the hat left Michael's head, the heartbeat of surprised silence, and then the explosion of joy as he transformed accident into improvisation, as he reminded everyone present that beneath the iconic exterior was a human being capable of play and discovery and genuine connection. I've been to hundreds of concerts since then. One such witness recently reflected, seeing the biggest names, the most elaborate productions. But I've never again experienced anything like that moment, when the biggest star in the world dropped his mask for just a minute and danced with a runaway hat, and in doing so, showed us all what entertainment could be at its most human and most magical.